This podcast is sponsored by nobody. Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today, I will be welcoming a podcast host. His name is Chris Mayek. You probably have seen him on YouTube. He's got a podcast where he talks to people in the world of anime, 80s movies, 80s music, and he's young, I think about 20, 21 years old. I will find out exactly. He's been doing it at least since the pandemic. That's how long I've been aware of him. And we're going to talk today, we're going to nerd out and talk about, podcasting and guests that we've had and all of that stuff. And I can't wait. I've been connected with him on Facebook for quite a while. He's a good kid, nice guy. And it's going to be a good conversation today. Hot August summer is off to a great start. And I'm so sorry I didn't acknowledge it yesterday. I've had a lot on my friggin' mind lately. Fucking Paul Rubens dying. It's just the worst catastrophe the world has faced in the last, probably, quite a while. I can't even give you an estimation of how long it's been. It's friggin' sad. Pee-wee is dead, and I can't stress that enough. It's really, really sad. Part of our childhood is gone forever, There never will be another Paul Rubens or Pee-wee Herman. I'm still sad. Rest in peace, Paul Rubens. So yeah, here is my interview with Chris Mayek.
Hi.
Hey Chris, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good, how are you?
I am fantastic. Thanks so much for taking the time to do this today, man.
Yeah, I know it's been quite a while that we've been connected, so I was kind of surprised it took this long for us to think about it.
Well, I'll tell you, man. I mean, I talk to a lot of actors, musicians, comedians, lots of people in the entertainment industry. But I thank God for the strike going on because I got to stay away from a lot of actors at the moment. So I thought, what, I got to talk to a lot of podcast hosts that I'm connected with because I got plenty of time to do it now.
Right. Yeah.
So, let's start with your background. You're born and raised in Minnesota, right?
Yeah.
Minnetonka?
That's where I was born, yeah. And then we moved to Hudson, which is on the border of western Wisconsin going into Minnesota. And then I went to high school there, and then now I live back in Minnesota again, just like a few minutes away from Hudson.
Nice. And you're way younger than I am. I'm 40. I'm guessing you're at least 21 tops.
No, I'm turning 26 in a few days.
Oh my God! I'm sorry. I'm scaling you back 5 years.
That's okay.
Yeah, I mean I knew you were younger, but wow, 26. Okay. Yeah, I'm always shocked when I meet young 20-year-olds who are into the 80s like I am, I mean, because I got to see the tail end of it and stuff, I'm guessing your parents were born in, what, the 60s?
Yeah, 58 and 60.
Okay, so they kind of, and I don't mean this in a negative way, indoctrinated you into the 80s pretty much, huh?
Yeah, I think it just started from growing up, always like driving around in the car, always having like classic rock stations on the radio, and then just on TV watching movies or being around like downstairs or whatever when older movies were on, and then but what really opened everything for me was renting The Breakfast Club when I was in 6th grade, and then after I saw that just kind of opened up everything else for me.
Oh yeah, I mean, is there any John Hughes movie any better than The Breakfast Club? It is a masterpiece.
Right.
It's just a masterpiece, man. I mean, I have the whole movie memorized verbatim. It's so damn good,
Yep.
So, what are a lot of your favorite '80s movies?
Um, well, I categorize. I have like my favorite non-horror movies and my favorite horror movies, like in general. But I always tell people that my top favorite movie was or is The Breakfast Club. But other favorite '80s movies, I guess, would be Firstborn,
Mm.
Secret Admirer, The Sure Thing,
Mm.
um, Making the Grade.
Oh.
Yeah, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, those are all great. How about Last American Virgin?
Oh yeah, that's fun too.
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of think it's overrated, but I mean, it's still good.
It's my favorite movie of all time. I love
Okay.
it. What I don't love about it is the new generations of fans and fan fiction that come out of the woodwork, and kind of, make it much more, I hate to say greater, but just much more of a thing than it is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a terrible thing surrounding, most movies we grew up with today. Ghostbusters.
It's fine.
Yeah. Night of the Comet.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that was kind of ahead of its time in a way.
Yeah, I totally agree. That and Back to the Future are like two of my absolute favorites. So you mentioned horror. So what horror movies do you like?
My single favorite, it kind of goes between Pin and the original Black Christmas.
What was the first one?
Pin.
Penn, it's funny. The other day, I was interviewed on a horror podcast, and someone told me, the person asked me, they said, if you could remake any movie and make it better, what would it be? And I came up with Penn.
Really?
Yeah,
Most people think that it's like totally fine as it is.
interesting. Yeah, I remember seeing it one time, like years ago, and thinking, I don't know, there's something about this movie that could be better, and I couldn't figure out at the time. I need to revisit it and see if my opinion still stands.
Oh, okay.
Are you a Freddy and Jason guy?
Yeah, probably more of the Friday movies and the Nightmare movies. I think a lot of my favorite '80s horror movies are slasher movies, though, like Curtains and The Initiation and
Yeah.
things like that.
Oh, I love those. Yeah, Curtains. Yeah, I've talked to Leslie Donaldson and Lynn Griffin, and Lynn's a good friend of mine. She's been on many times and stuff. We talk at least once a year, Lynn and I, and it's always a
Oh,
hilarious conversation.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm more of a Jason guy. I just like just that hockey mask and just simple killings and stuff. Um, that host who interviewed me said, do you think that Jason and Michael Myers is the same person? Like a lot of the fans on the internet say. I'm like, no, they're two different guys. Maybe they're
I've never, yeah.
cousins, but they're not the same guy.
Yeah.
Are you an Evil Dead guy?
Yeah. I like the first movie a lot more than any other one, but I saw the latest one that came out, and I thought that was good.
Yeah, I haven't seen the newer ones yet. I mean, I heard that the Ash series that was on Stars for a while was pretty good, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Evil Dead 1 and 2 and Army of Darkness, that's a masterpiece horror trilogy, I think.
Yeah.
Do you like Hellraiser?
Nah, I've never really been able to get into that as much.
Yeah, it takes a lot of patience to get into Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's taken me time, I have to tell you. The female Cenobite in 2, Barbie Wild, she's a frequent guest, and
Mm,
she loves being the Queen Cenobite.
yeah.
How about the Chucky movies?
Not as much. I've never really been into doll horror movies. I just think that they're kind of silly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I like them, but it's not my absolute favorite as well. I mean, it's all started, in the 60s with the Twilight Zone, with Talking Tina.
Yep.
How about sci-fi?
Not really. I guess the main movie in that genre that I like enough to see more than once is The Fly, but besides that, I've never been as much into that genre.
Sci-fi is well, the Fly is sci-fi horror, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you never into like Star Wars or any dark stuff like Alien or Blade Runner or stuff like that?
No, not really. I mean, Blade Runner's fine, because that's like cyberpunk too.
Yeah.
So I guess more, if I'm into anything that's sci-fi, it's like sci-fi adjacent.
I totally get it. Yeah. You're also an anime fan. I'm not a huge anime fan, but I respect it. I prefer simpler animation. My best friend who died in a car crash 2 months before my own was a huge anime fan. He went to the cons and everything. What is it about anime that appeals to you?
I don't know. I think with a lot of people that have it be a big part of their life, as I do, I think if you see it when you're a kid, it either imprints on you and then never leaves, or you're just into it for a brief period and then you grow out of it. But I don't know. I just think it's for a number of reasons, but it's always like anime has always done things that no other country animation has done, and they were like speaking of topics that were handled in like Sailor Moon. It's like people being gay were always just a normal thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it just like tackles things that other countries don't with animation, and just back when anime was all hand painted and drawn too, that just once I realized that was how it was made before the early 2000s, that just made me appreciate it even more.
Interesting. Yeah. Were you a Pokemon fan?
Yeah, I still am.
Yeah. That's I think a lot of kids that came from a little bit younger than my generation. I think their introduction to anime was Pokemon.
Yeah, I think it's most people. At least if you're like between my age and like as old as 35, then that's usually what most people's introduction to anime was.
Yeah, there was this one kid I went to high school with. He had a younger brother who was a Pokemon fan, and I didn't even know who Pokemon really was yet at that point, and he started calling me Snorlax.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't like it, I'll tell you. In fact, he jokingly said he was going to change the nickname on my senior quote to Snorlax. I'm like, you do, I'll freaking kick your ass. Have you ever seen the Clerks cartoon?
I haven't. I think I've just seen like clips of it. I haven't like actually watched it.
There was one, oh my god, it was hilarious. It turned into anime for the last like 2 minutes of the episode. It was just hilarious. And there was like an anime Tom Cruise coming to the rescue, and the bad guy's like, "Oh no, Tom Cruise, you want the truth? You can't handle the truth. Show me the money."
Oh.
It was pretty damn funny. Yeah. Do you yourself do any anime drawing or drawing in general?
No, but my main hobby is collecting real production art for anime back when that's how it was all created. So I have a like decent collection of real authentic production artwork from various older series that I grew up with and all that.
Nice. You collect them on eBay and go to cons to collect it and stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, back then, dealers for that stuff at cons were more common. There's not really as much now, but there's a lot of Japanese websites that are similar to eBay that you just need like a third-party service to buy anything or bid on if you don't live in Japan. But there's a lot of stuff on eBay for it too, yeah.
Yeah, oh, I've noticed that. It's funny. I collect VHS tapes from way back when. VHS tapes that I rented as a kid, and that were around since, in some cases, the late '70s, but mostly the '80s. And I have noticed since the pandemic, inflation has gone up so high on these VHS tapes that I'm just scrounging to complete my collection because I know that these are going to be extinct soon because they're over 40 years old. And then I remember buying, in 2017, certain tapes that were anywhere between 10 and $15, and now a lot of them can be anywhere between $80 to $1,000. I'm just like, oh my God, it is mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's crazy. I used to be, it was before COVID, but I was pretty heavy into the VHS collecting circle too, and I still have one drawer full of them, but yeah, I just kind of got burned out on that fast.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep going, until I can't anymore, and I've got a huge collection, which, oh my God, it kind of stresses my family out, because they're just like, they see how big the collection's growing. They're like, where are you gonna put everything? What if something happens to you? What are we gonna do with them?
Yeah.
That kind of craziness. But yeah, I love all the old clamshell tapes from Warner Brothers and the Thor and MI collection, which is my most prized collection, because Thor and MI, I mean, they were innovators in VHS back in the day. Yeah, that's so cool. So, at some point during the pandemic, I discovered your podcast when it came up in an algorithm search. I can't remember who the first one was I watched, but I liked it right away. So was this a pandemic project for you?
Yeah, it just started because I, like, the month, or either the month or the month that COVID shut everything down in April of 2020, I paid to virtually meet a voice actor that I'd always been a fan of, Eric Vale, and I talked to him for like almost 10 minutes, and then I realized afterward that all the voice actors that I liked the most or grew up with, whatever, they hadn't done any interviews that were talking about the roles that I liked them the most for, so I just thought to myself that I was going to try and do this without having to pay for it after I did that. And then I started officially in summer of 2020, and it worked out better than I ever expected it would.
Yeah, I mean, I like how you like to ask people about stuff that they don't really talk about before or never have. I do that too, but I try to get to, I'm such a fanboy, I try to get to the bulk of their filmography or discography because I figure this will be the only time I talk to them, but I always make sure that when I talk to someone who is oversaturated and they're so used to talking about the same thing over and over again with the same projects, I try to make sure that I ask questions that are at least original and I haven't heard them answered before, so the person won't get annoyed. But I like that. I think that every actor has some stuff in their filmography that's an absolute gem, and you wonder why it never gets mentioned or talked about. And sometimes you hear negative reasons why, whether there was sexual harassment on the set, or there was a clash with a co-star or the director, or they just plain don't even remember it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So that voiceover guy that you just mentioned, that he was your first interview?
He was he's what started everything. I did get to interview him normally, like February of 2021. But my first real interview was Billy Steinberg, who I know you also did a little while after I did.
That was a strange experience because I remember seeing him and Tom Kelly interviewed on MTV many times growing up and stuff, and he was a very charming and gregarious guy. But I think that the pandemic affected him. He was just very morose, very just low key during my interview and yours. I just thought that was kind of bizarre.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was glad that I got to interview him twice in the same time frame, but I mean, even just my normal communication with him, he's just very like straight and to the point, and
Yeah.
I don't know if he's always been like that or what.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't know. I mean, he used to just be a very easygoing, charming guy who liked to laugh and stuff. I don't know, but it was an honor. It was a great honor talking to him. There's a couple songs I forgot to bring up during that interview that I wish I had, but yeah, it was good overall. When you do the interviews, you look like you're standing the entire time. Are you?
Oh no, I'm never standing.
Okay, just the way that camera is angled, it looks like you got your head almost close to the ceiling, like you're standing. And I'm like, oh my God, how does he do it? I got a bad back and bad knees. I could never do that.
Oh no, yeah.
Wow, I would have never have guessed. Yeah, because I don't see a chair behind you either. Usually when I see people on Zoom, they usually got one of those those high leveled chairs where you can see what kind of chair they're sitting on.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, let's start with musicians. You've talked to great musicians. You had Eric Martin of Mr. Big on. That must have been fantastic.
Yeah, because I'm a big fan of his solo stuff and solo and like guest stuff that he has done before Mr. Big, and just to talk to him as long as we did and cover like literally everything. That was great, and he's a super amazing, nice guy.
Yeah, I learned stuff about him I never knew. I didn't know he had a career before Mr. Big. I didn't know his solo stuff before that. It kind of boggled my mind that he was a solo guy before Mr. Big. Because Mr. Big wasn't one of my more favorite '80s / early '90s hair metal bands. Because they were like right at the tail end of it. But that was cool. Yeah. Let's see, people that we both have had. G. Tom Mack, he really liked me because I asked about his early stuff before the Lost Boys, and he was just opening up to me. He was cool.
Yeah, same. That's again predominantly what we talked about, because I have his some of his solo albums before that too, and I think it's like genuinely good music.
Yeah, and he had that album, that William James Garcia produced. After he had produced Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and stuff. And it kind of has a Chicago sound with the horns on it,
Mm-hmm.
D.L. Byron, he's interesting.
Yeah, he passed away a few months ago.
What? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh my God! Okay, I gotta do a belated tribute because he was very nice to me. I liked him. Oh,
yeah,
God,
he was really nice.
That is so sad. Yeah, there's a lot of my guests that I found out died that I didn't find out till months later, and stuff because I didn't see any talk about it. Wow. Oh my God, that is so mind-boggling. Thanks for telling me, Chris.
Yeah.
You had Desmond Child. To me, that guy represents the holy trinity of '80s metal, and I'm as I said, I'm a huge '80s metal guy. Were you surprised you got him?
Yeah, actually, because that was also still really early on for me. That was when I was still doing interviews on Skype and not on Zoom, and I wasn't really editing anything. I was just like uploading it after it was done. But yeah, he was really cool, and I'm still really flattered that my interview with him is still on his website, like in the press section. So that's just always really cool to see.
Oh yeah, I've got a handful of those that I am so happy about. Even a person that I had a falling out with, I'm still on there, which is kind of bizarre.
Oh,
And we had a hilarious interview too. I remember. Yeah, I mean, he's produced Aerosmith, Rat, Scorpions, Alice Cooper, all my hard rock playlist. I mean, I was really impressed that you got him. Um, just recently, I had Marcy Levy on, and I know you have
Yeah.
her. She is very interesting, very funny. It took her 2 years to say yes because she thought that I wanted dirt on Clapton because of the COVID controversy, and so
Oh.
it took a lot of convincing, but then when she heard my interview with Susie Quattro, then she said yes immediately. And it was the last day of June, and June is National Belly Button Month, and she had no trouble telling me that her belly button was an innie and it used to be pierced, and her husband told her to get rid of it.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, so that was a good conversation. Man, I'm jealous of a lot of people you've had, like Rosanna Arquette. How did you land her?
Yeah, that was another like shock. When I realized I made one of those trial IMDb Pro accounts, then I realized that I didn't know before that like if you have IMDb Pro, then you can see like contact information for literally anyone's agent or manager or publicist. So I just when I got her, I had emailed like a ton of big 80s people that are still relatively big, and her manager was like one of the only people that responded and like immediately agreed, and then it just took like a week or two to set up, and then we had it. And yeah, it was really cool that she was asking me about myself too, and
Yeah,
she's just she's a great person.
that is great because when you get these like legendary iconic people, it sometimes takes months, maybe up to a year before you actually get them. But wow, it only took a couple of weeks. That's a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Pare. Oh my God, he was a hero of mine growing up. Like I've DM'd him and I haven't. I think it went to his spam folder or something, maybe because it's gone unread. But he was a great interview. I watched that one.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was another because I was really into those Eddie and the Cruisers movies when I was in high school, especially, and just his career outside of that in general too, like things that could have happened that didn't happen, and smaller parts that he had in larger movies in other decades. And yeah, he was really cool and patient.
Oh yeah, my dad's favorite movie has always been Eddie and the Cruisers, and I got that movie for Christmas for him years ago and stuff. He just loves that movie, and yeah, I mean I'm a big fan of Streets of Fire and the Philadelphia Experiment, and this movie he did. It was kind of a sex comedy. It was called The Woman's Club. Have you ever seen it?
No.
It was in 1987. It's on YouTube. Check it out. It's pretty funny. He's an out of work screenwriter in Hollywood who has to prostitute himself to rich women in order to make money, and he falls in love along the way. It's the cliche romantic comedy story of the 80s.
Yeah, that's fun. I wouldn't have like expected him to be in something like that.
Oh yeah, it's pretty funny. Leah Thompson, I met her at my first Comic-Con, and she was just an absolute sweetheart. How did you get her?
Yeah, that was a really long time coming. I messaged her. I paid to message her on Cameo, like a couple dollars, and I just was fortunate enough that she responded and agreed to it. And I think it might have been because I was like, I'm also from Minnesota, and I don't know, probably a combination of things, but it took like a couple of years before I was finally talking to her, and it was set up through her manager and manager assistant, and originally they were like I don't know, you've probably gotten this a lot too, where someone that isn't the celebrity tells you that like they can only talk for a small amount of time, but then once you're on the call with them, it ends up naturally going for however long, and it's totally fine. So I'm glad that was the case with her too.
Oh yeah, I mean, I got Caroline Munro, from lots of '70s, British horror
Yep.
movies and The Spy Who Loved Me, James Bond movie, and like I only had 30 minutes with her, but it went a little bit longer than that, not a ton, a lot longer, but it was fine. So
Yeah.
yeah, and her manager who set it up, she was very pleased with it. So.
Hmm.
Yeah, I hope to get her at some point, Leah Thompson, because I'm just a huge fan. She's like one of my top favorite actresses of all time. Um, you even had Julie Madalena from Children of the Corn.
Yeah, it's funny since she's obviously one of those people that um, started in live action work a long time ago and is predominantly known for anime and anime video games nowadays. But she also she was in, I think her first ever role was in Street Music with E.G. Daily in 1981.
Oh yeah, yeah. I hope to get her next year for the 40th anniversary of Children of the Corn. I remember I think I sent her a DM like a year ago or something, and I'll tell you, there's been situations where I've sent someone a DM and they didn't respond for until a year from now or maybe 2 years. So maybe she'll get it
Yep.
next year.
Yeah.
Who knows? On the songwriting front, though, have you ever tried to get Rick Nowels or Holly Knight?
Not Rick, but I did talk to Holly a long time ago before her book came out, and at that time she just told me that she was saving things for her book. So and now I noticed that since her book's been out, she's pretty much been doing them nonstop. So I feel like I don't think I could really talk about anything that she hasn't talked about a lot.
Yeah, she said the same thing to me in 21, and this one podcast host I'm friends with just got her, and she gave her my email, and of course I haven't heard from her, so I don't know. I mean, there's still hope, I mean, she obviously likes to do them, and it's probably not just because of the book, because
Right.
I found ones that she did years ago on YouTube, I mean, she likes to talk, so it's possible,
Yeah.
either one of us could get her in the future.
Hmm.
You know, yeah. Rick Nowels, though, yeah, I emailed him from his website. His actual email is on there, and I never heard back. I was hoping to get him last year for the 35th anniversary of Belinda Carlisle's "Heaven Is a Place on Earth" album.
Oh yeah.
Um, let's see, mutual friend guests of cult films. Let's see, I've had, Joyce Heiser, Kathy Stewart, Susan Roman, Dee Dee Pfeiffer, Charlene Tilton, Lenore Zann. They're all great guests and stuff. Anything stand out about those?
Uh, yeah. I mean, it was cool. It was cool with Joyce.
Yeah.
Just to talk about things that she hadn't really covered publicly. Like her when she dated Bruce Springsteen and
Yeah.
stuff that she auditioned for, like Body Double, and stuff that she almost got, like Tootsie, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't know about Body Double. That's cool. Yeah, I love her. She's been on 3 times, and I met her a month before the pandemic at a screening of Just One of the Guys up in San Francisco, and
Oh,
it was great seeing her and Sherilyn Fenn, who I had met before. And Sherilyn admitted during the Q&A she really did have a crush on Joyce.
oh, cool.
Yeah. Kathy Stewart, she's been on many times, and I met her at my first HorrorCon in 2016. Her and Kelly Maroney were both great when I met them. Yeah, Susan Roman, I like her. Dee Dee Pfeiffer. Now, that was a huge bucket list guest for me. I've been a huge fan of the movie Vamp forever, and lots of stuff that she's done. And I assume you booked her through Turk, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so I interviewed Patrika Darbo through him, and he kept throwing clients at me that were just starting out in the industry that I had never heard of, and they didn't have anything to say because I listened to a couple previous interviews, and it was like dead air conversations, right? And so I said to him, I noticed on your website you have Dee Dee Pfeiffer, can you get me her? And he said to me, I'll get you her on two conditions. One, you change the name of your podcast because Splat is offensive, and two, turn your show into a Zoom show. And I said to him, I support your decision of starting that podcast, and he never talked to me again after that. but
No.
then, but then I was on her Instagram one day last year, and she said that she had a new publicist, and so I reached out to that new publicist, and we were doing it 2 weeks later. It was awesome.
Oh, okay.
It was just like with Rosanna with you, just 2 weeks later. And now Dee Dee and I are friends. I'm going to be going on her podcast soon when it gets launched. She's doing a podcast about alcoholism and recovery and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And I told her about my car accident during the interview. So, she wants to talk. Yeah.
Mhm.
That is just so awesome. When you had Rebecca Forstad on, I know you're talking to her about the anime and all the animation voiceover stuff she does, right? I saw her, I was like, she looks familiar, so I look up IMDb and I found out, yeah, she was the nerd girl in Muggsy's Girls. I'm like, oh yeah, I got to reach out to her for that. I love that movie.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and she's been very nice to me and very supportive of me too. And whenever she tweets that she's going to be at this Comic-Con here or there, I always retweet it, and she loves it. Saffron Henderson, I really want her. How did you get her?
It was through a lot of the people in Vancouver in Canada have the same voice agency, and she's been with the same agent for a long time, and I think they just forwarded it to her a couple times. Then all of a sudden, Saffron just emailed me directly and said that she was finally comfortable enough to come out of her shell and do interviews for the first time, and that's just how it happened.
Yeah, I noticed that she didn't do too many, and I was always DMing her, and I never got a response back. But maybe next year for the 35th anniversary of Jason Takes Manhattan, maybe there's a chance. Yeah, I was mind boggled to find out she's Bill Henderson's daughter. I like Chili Whack.
Yeah, same.
The early Chili Whack when they were kind of a Pink Floydian type of progressive rock band.
Oh right, yeah.
I mean, the mainstream era is okay, but that early stuff, it's pretty subversive and pretty cool. Now, you and I, we both had our experiences with Tanya Katane at the end of her life, which was sad, But yeah, you were one of the last people to interview her. So how did that come about?
I think I just communicated with her on social media, and that's how it was set up. And then I was fortunate enough to become friends with her and have her phone number and text her pretty often after the interview. And I was supposed to interview her again a week before she died, and it just didn't work out because I was out of town on the day that we were supposed to do it. And then it was 3 or 4 days later that she died, but I still have I saved the voicemail that she left me on that day, and I still have all our texts together. So yeah, it was really sad.
Oh, I thought you were one of the last people in the last few days or something.
Oh no, I interviewed her in January, so it was a few months before she died.
Okay, because what's his name, David Yontef on Behind the Velvet Rope. He takes credit for being her actual last interview, but I thought you did it. So, okay, because I talked to her in December of 2020, and that was pretty sad.
Yeah,
it was just awful. Have you ever had a guest that was so bad you didn't release the interview?
Yeah, just one time.
Yeah, you don't have to reveal the name, but what happened?
It was and yeah, I'm not going to, but it's a musician who has had a pretty big following. Not a huge name, but his stuff has been in. He's been around since the '70s, and his stuff has been in major film and TV in the past 10 years. But it was just a thing where his wife handled all media inquiries, and then once we were on and like actually talking, she just got, I guess, like in her perspective, I was going too slow in chronological order with his career, and she got mad that I wasn't mostly talking about his like most recent music, even though I was getting there. And so she just like freaked out, and I just lost interest because she was just freaking out and just saying like really offensive things as insults to me. And that was the story of that. That was like 2 years ago.
Oh my God, I have never heard such a thing. That is just awful. Oh my God. That is pretty bad. Yeah, I gotta tell you, in 2020, I had 2 guests that had a new book agenda, right? Which I didn't. I didn't care anything about it, right? I just wanted to talk about the past, right? And one guy who I still think is probably my worst interview, because he started out good and then he just got really rude and arrogant and stuff. About 35 minutes in, he's like, "Are we ever going to talk about my book?" And then from there, he was just he got worse and worse, right? And then one guy who was actually a legendary talk show host on PBS, and he's been around forever, right? We're talking for like 12, 15 minutes about the past and stuff, and then he told me that he had to go in 5 minutes and he wanted to talk about the new book, and he had committed to an hour, right? And that was a valuable lesson to me. And so ever since then, when someone's got something new, I always talk about the new stuff first, always.
Yeah, right.
That had never happened before. I had been doing it 3 years. I had maybe 800 and something interviews by that point. That was the first time that ever happened. And you know what they say, there's a first time for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I've had 2 particular interviews that I just didn't release. I had an actor who had just got out of a really bad audition. He was getting just really cranky and stuff. And after I made him laugh about something, he had to go all of a sudden and told me that we could finish it tomorrow. And that day never came. And after months and months of frustration of trying to get him to finish it, I just deleted the file. But I'm thinking about reaching out to him next year and asking him to start over because it's the anniversary of a movie that he was in that I love. And then there was an actress who was in a cult horror movie in the 80s that was shot in my hometown. And she obviously did drugs back in the day. She was all over the place, and she was saying kind of rude things to me throughout, and it just killed my mood. So I told her that I wasn't going to release it, in email, and she said, "Good idea. You're a pro at this." Yeah. I'm sure every podcast host has gone through this. Have you had anyone ask you for money?
Just 2 times. 3 times. There were, three voice actors that said that they like only did paid appearances, and they were really nice about it. But I just said that I've never paid for anybody that I've interviewed, and I don't plan on ever doing that. So sorry.
Yeah, I've had a couple people too. There was a stunt woman who I've talked to a lot of stunt women who got screwed over by the union at the end of their careers when they got injured. I mean, the SAG-AFTRA is not good to stunt people, especially the women. And she is like broke, and she's like saying I'll do anything as long as it's paid, and stuff. And my heart went out to her, and I said I wish I could, but I can't, But God bless you. I hope everything works out for you, and if it does, let me know, and we'll do a free interview because you'll already have something coming in, I hope.
Yeah.
But Tammy Aaron, who played Pippi Longstocking in the 80s. So I reached out to her in November of 2018. We had a day set up that month, for an hour. And then the day of, she had to reschedule. And then a month went by where I didn't hear from her. And then a couple days before Christmas, she got back to me and she said, "I'll give you 20 minutes for $400. And I said, "You are out of your fucking mind." And she blocked me on Twitter. And then I called her out on her Facebook fan page. First time I've ever done that with somebody that I had a weird confrontation with to be on a podcast. The first time and only time I'll ever do that. I was pretty furious, you know. You know, she thinks that because she had a sex tape 10 years ago that she's the queen, you know. It was just sad. So what are your favorite interviews that you've done so far?
Yeah, it's hard to pick. But obviously Tawny and Leah are some of the top ones. Billy for sure. And then I have a lot of favorite voice actor ones, but one of them I always say is Veronica Taylor, who was Ash in Pokemon, just for like a nostalgic childhood reason. And then Dan Green, who was Yugi in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Mewtwo in Pokemon for the same reason.
Nice. So it's mostly the anime people are your favorite.
Yeah, just since that's obviously what I do most of.
Yeah, I noticed that, you know, in the last year or two, you've done a lot more voiceover people than the other stuff. As it's just getting too much to deal with the bullshit that comes with, you know, talking to actors and musicians.
No, it's just what I've always been more focused on. But I think, yeah, the last musician I did was Andy Paley, who that was earlier this year, who was known for he had a solo career and a career with his brother in the 70s, but he's known for doing like all the songs for SpongeBob.
For SpongeBob.
Nowadays.
Yeah. So who's on your bucket list? You know, and I mean realistic bucket list. You know, people that you know you can get but you haven't yet.
Oh, in terms of non-anime people,
anybody, yeah.
Well, just because it's you and I talking, I know one of them. One of them I'd always like to talk to is Julie Brown.
Oh, yeah, not downtown Julie Brown, but you know the one from Earth Girls Are Easy. That's her movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who else that would be like realistic? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's not realistic, but like if anybody who's asked me this before, I always say that Michelle Pfeiffer is my like number one.
Ask Dee Dee. I would never ask her that personally, just because I know she wouldn't do it because she's such a huge caliber movie star, you know, who's had the Academy Award nomination and so forth, right? But also too, I you know, I want Dee Dee to, you know, trust me and all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it would be a trip if she, like, you know, had her on her podcast and, like, surprised me with her. I mean, I would probably just, you know, be all nervous and everything.
Yeah, for sure.
I've been going back and forth with Valerie Landsberg of Fame. Like, she was my number one crush growing up, and I hope to talk to her in the future. Darby Hinton, who was the boy on Daniel Boone. I never really watched Daniel Boone, but I love the exploitation movies he did in the 70s and 80s that I'd like to talk to him about. Ileana Douglas would be my number one bucket list guest because she's a classic film buff, and so am I. I think her and I would have a great conversation.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What's your family's reaction to your show? And, like, you know, do they like what you're doing? Are they supportive?
Oh, yeah. They've always been. I'm an only child, so it's just my parents. But yeah, like it's been totally supportive. Everybody that I know in my personal life has been very cool about it. Nobody's been. There hasn't been any sort of negative reaction. I don't know why there would be anyway, but yeah, it's been like 100% positive since I've been doing it.
Yeah, well, friends and family, they always got to find some negative flaw in something you do because they know you so well, and
Yeah.
like, I get a lot of support from strangers who don't even know me. They just know, how good I am at interviewing, and that stuff. And like, I wish I got more support from, all the people back home that knew me. They just know me. They just, they know me as Tommy. They just, to them I'm just Tommy. And I just would like to say, okay, but have you listened to the show? Am I doing okay? I'd like to hear that, but they don't do it, sadly. But my family supports what I do.
That's good.
When did you start going to conventions?
I started going again. I hadn't gone since I was in middle school, but then I started going again actively just in the past year. And I go to pretty much all the anime related ones that are in Minnesota. There's not that many. There's just like 3, and then there's one that covers everything called Twin Cities Con that happens in the fall every year, and I got to do my first in-person interview at Twin Cities Con last year. So yeah, I think from now on I'll be going to all the cons around here regularly.
Yeah, I go to I've been only going to like one con a year since the pandemic because, for one, a lot of cons that were around pre-pandemic are kind of dying off, in terms
Yeah.
of geography and stuff, and it's gotten to the point now where just so many people are just doing it for the money and not another reason, and all the interactions are just high and by, and it's really bumming me out, so I haven't gone to many
Yeah.
of them. And I want to host panels at conventions, but it's really hard to get into it. I almost did 2 years ago, but then my mom had surgery that weekend, and I'm glad because I did not want to do a Q&A with Tom Sizemore.
Oh.
Yeah, if I know that someone hits women, that's not okay with me. I wouldn't have been comfortable being on that stage with him, just for my own moral barometer.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, like, who are some of your interactions that you've had at cons that have been really pleasant?
Well, um, most of the reason, no, I shouldn't say most, but like a big reason why I've gone to the ones I've gone to in the past year is because I had already interviewed the voice actors that were guests, and so that's been a really fun, great thing to do, is to meet them in person. And but I've done 3 live interviews so far at cons, and those have just been like amazing, and there was zero anxiety on my end, and it's something I want to do more of too.
I did a 5-minute horror festival interview with Kelly Maroney back in 2018. I would like to get her for the full hour on here, but there's this unruly, quote unquote, fanager who's like handling her press now, and handles so many people's press of people that I know and stuff, that my friend Greg Gilbert had to deal with years ago, that I just stay away from and I avoid and stuff.
Oh.
But hopefully in the future, at some point, I'll convince her to come on. Yeah, I mean, most of the people I've interviewed that I've met at cons have been pleasant, for the most part. I've only had a handful of unpleasant experiences meeting people at cons, whether it's Linda Blair, Candy Clark, Danielle Harris, Tara Reid. Like, I didn't like those ones particularly. Christy Swanson, of course, everyone knows how awful she is. She's a Trump supporter on Twitter.
Yeah.
I heard you recently on the $2 late fee podcast, and I'm curious, like, how did you connect with those guys?
Oh yeah, Zach and Dustin are great.
Yeah.
I met Dustin because he got cast as a character in Fire Emblem last year, and that's one of the franchises that I like regularly interview voice actors that are added to it. And so I interviewed him for that, and then just came to find out that he does what he does outside of his career, and then quickly became friends with both of them. And then I did my first appearance on their show last year, and then I just recently did it for talking about Jill Sholin movies. My second appearance on there too, so I'm sure I'll be on there again. They're both really fun hosts, and they're both great at interviewing too.
Jill's a good friend of mine. I had her on twice in 2019, and it was just so wonderful. I just adore her. I really, really do. You know, I gotta have her back on again at some point and stuff. She came on my anniversary show last year, and we had a great talk. The whole talk was good, and I had to trim down most of the talks because there were going to be 3 really long videos, so I had to cut a lot of people down from 45 minutes to 10 or 15 minutes, depending on how good the conversation was. But yeah, I adore Jill. Have you tried getting her on your show?
I met her in person back in 2017, and also just from the fact that she's done so many appearances, and I got to ask her some things through Dustin and Zach when they interviewed her recently. I couldn't really talk about anything that she hasn't already talked about a million times. So
yeah, I mean, there's stuff that she's done that she's not proud of, but there's a lot of stuff that she is proud of, and she is writing a memoir. I know that.
Yeah.
Which I'm pretty happy about, so I'll probably get her on when she finally finishes it and stuff. Yeah, I'm connected with Zach on Facebook, and I don't think he knows that I'm a podcast host. I think he thinks that I'm an annoying fan because I'm always throwing guest suggestions back and forth at them and stuff, and commenting, oh, I interviewed so and so and all that stuff. But I listen to their show. I think they're pretty cool.
Yeah.
So do you have any upcoming guests you'd like to mention? I noticed you haven't done a new episode in like a month now.
Yeah, it's just there's just stuff that there's no hard date for anything that I'm doing upcoming, and I think the actors strike also has something to do with that too. But the next update for Genshin Impact comes out in 3 weeks, and so I'm sure that, well, I already know because I've talked to some of them about it in email, but I'll be doing more people that are part of that game and play new characters in that game once that update happens. So I'm sure I'll have my next couple probably within August.
Yeah, or maybe you'll get a musician or two, because if they're not actors, you can get musicians too.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, like I got the lead singer of the Cucumbers coming on Friday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they did that song "My Boyfriend" in 1983. Yeah, that was a trivia question on Brain Games, this HBO little segment show I used to watch when I was a kid. They used to air them, between cartoons in the morning back in the day. Yeah, I think by the time you were growing up, they weren't doing that no more. But like in the 80s and 90s, Brain Games was the shit. Like I have 2 VHS tapes of the best of Brain Games, and my brother saw them and was like, "You got Brain Games? You didn't tell me." Because he was a kid when they first started. My brother's 9 years older than me. Like they started when he was like 8 or 9 or something. So he was pretty happy about that. Well, Chris, I thank you so much for coming on today and having this conversation. And I like what you do, man. Keep doing it. And, have a great rest of your summer and be safe out there. I'll continue watching.
Yeah, thank you. I was glad to have an actual conversation after being connected for so long.
Absolutely. All right, man. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. Chris Mayek. Ain't he a cool dude? Oh, my God. Nice guy. I couldn't believe it when he told me he was 26. I thought he was at least 21. I mean, of course he's a baby and he's got a baby face, but like 21 at least I thought he was. I thought he was maybe 17, 18 years old when he started that show, and he's well beyond his years. If you haven't seen Chris Mayek on YouTube, go check him out. He is awesome. Well, until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying there's no shame in living in the past because the present sucks. Later, dudes.